You know, one other misconception is, of course, the big story about the dog, the talking dog. First of all, as I shared in the article that my mother gave to the Good Housekeeping back in 1978, where my sister also spoke, and I had a lot of, you know, mental health issues. I really was losing my mind. I had become schizophrenic, and I believe that was a result of the demons that were really inside of me and working, and I opened myself up to. But I had mental health issues all my life, and behavioral issues all my life, including the attention deficit disorder and hyperactivity, which back then as a child, you know, wasn't even recognized. I was just seen as a nuisance and a disciplinary problem, and somebody for teachers to scream at because of things which I couldn't control. I'm sorry, I just couldn't control that stuff. But nevertheless, my mental health began to deteriorate, and at times I was hallucinating, and I did, during some occultic rituals, use LSD as well as drink some wine. So I had some maybe after effects of that, and I used LSD when I was in the Army too. Not to make excuses, but this was at the time some of the things I was dealing with as a young man, you know, just trying to make it in life, and just trying to survive, and just doing things that young men usually do sometimes without thinking, you know. Because of the Satanism, one of the deities that I used to pay homage to was a deity by the name of Samhain, which I used to call Samhain, spelled S-A-M-H-A-I-N, Samhain. He was a druidic deity of druids, which demanded human sacrifice. And because I used to seek communication with this demonic entity, as dumb and crazy as it sounds, I regret this. This was a nightmare, but at the time, that's what I was doing. So I was calling upon this demonic entity, this druid spirit, and it was like he was reaching out to me. In my mind, I felt I was really getting messages from him. I was reading literature from a church called the Process Church of Final Judgment. I was using some of that literature, which was calling on to start anarchy and try to bring in the end of the world so that Jesus could come back. It was a whole mixed up, twisted philosophy, but it was something that was, I believe, demonically energized. The teachings which I was reading from, also the Satanic Bible, and other things I was trying to do at that time of my life of searching and everything, these things became very real. It was hard to distinguish reality from that, and you know, still struggling to make a living and work and pay bills, and even though I was getting further and further behind. When I was arrested, I only had $65 to my name, so I was on a collision course with death. Concerning the so-called dog, after I came to prison, because that became a big thing, you know, they said the media and everything went wild. The dog made him do it, Harvey the dog, which was a neighbor's dog named Harvey. It had nothing to do with the crimes. It had nothing to do with the crimes. But the media, somehow, I don't know, they made it like that dog was talking to me, this or that. There was a time of a lot of confusion, but I was trying to let people know in a roundabout way. In a way, it was my fault too. But I was trying to let people know, no, Sam, the dog's name was not Sam, it was named Harvey. Samhain was the deity that was communicating with me. And people could never make that distinction because they had no understanding of spiritual things. And I couldn't explain it clearly myself. My mind was a mess. So that's how that whole thing started. And when I got to prison, you know, when you're a new person in prison, especially when you have a high-profile case like I did, you know, a lot of the guards, a lot of the inmates would tease you. You know, you have that kind of thing, initiation phase where you're a new jack coming into prison. I came to prison with multiple life sentences. I went to Attica Prison, one of the most dangerous and infamous prisons in the United States, because about 7 or 8 years earlier, they had a major riot where over 40 people were killed, and so it had a terrible reputation, and it was a difficult atmosphere. And so I took a lot of ribbing from people about the dog. Sometimes guys would make barking noises. Some of the guards even, just teasing me, would make barking noises, go, oh, and it's stupid, childish stuff, but that's how it is in that kind of life. But it used to bother me so much, and I got into a few fights over that. And one day I said, thinking that it was kind of like a magical thinking. I was thinking that if I just said, oh, there was no real talking dog or anything like that, that everything would just go away. So I said that to somebody, I wrote that to somebody in the media, and it made it look like the whole story was made up. But it wasn't. It wasn't really made up. I mean, there was an actual demon by the name of Sam Hain that I was communicating with. I regret to say that sounds very dumb, but at the time I really believed that stuff, and I was really brainwashed, and I believe I was under a degree of hypnotic control. This is not to make an excuse for anything, but at the time of my life, that's how messed up I was. I still, even when I was in Attica, I still had some occult books, and I was practicing rituals in my cell. Very dumb and foolish things, but that's what I was doing in my ignorance and in my rebellion, and just trying to survive. I only wanted to survive. So I figured that by saying, oh, there was no dog, I just made the whole thing up, the whole thing would go away. But really it was confusion to begin with, because there really wasn't a dog, it was a demon. But no one was able to make that distinction, and so for years, and even till today, there's been a lot of misconceptions about that. And that'll probably always be there, because it's too complicated to figure out. People listen, thinking, oh yeah, sure, but that's the way it was. It was just a lot of confusion, yeah.
So the dog barking had nothing to do with anything?
Well, it was annoying at times, but it wore me down. But the barking dog wore me down, and at times it was annoying, and but that.
I'm sorry. So tell us that. So it was your neighbor that had a barking dog.
Well, there was a number of them. This has been a thing even going back to the Bronx, but the barking dog had nothing to do with the crimes. That was just once I got into that media cycle of whatever, it just got built up to some dramatic thing, when really it was just a.
So two stories got mixed together.
Yeah, right. My communication with demons back and forth, which I was under a spell. And again, that's not to make any excuse for anything, but that's the way the state of my mind was at the time. And then the actual barking of neighbors' dogs, which was annoying, but that was something altogether different. And it just melded together in one ball of confusion. And it's been that way ever since, a ball of confusion. And people don't know what to make of it, but it's not a big issue anymore. I mean, it's just nothing. Really, it's about nothing, but I don't know, for some reason people become obsessed. They lock into that dog thing, and then movies have been made about it, and all kinds of books, novels, crime novels have that. So that's just part of the history that's be there forever. But the reality is that had nothing to do with the crimes, that I was communicating, I'm sorry to say, with demonic entities in my ignorance and my foolishness. And I was getting messages, I thought I was getting messages in my mind, from these entities and so forth. And so that was the real deal. And that's,